Hello. Let's finish up our hoops. Take off our needle minders if you have one. Okay, so we can do a couple of different things. So let me tell you, if you just have a single hoop, your information will be at the end. Happy belated birthday. Thank you. Yesterday was my birthday, which is why we moved this to today, because yesterday would have been fine, but I decided not to work on my birthday. Okay, so if you're just doing a single hoop, then this first part won't matter to you. But if you are doing the double hoop, then you'll want to watch the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of different options depending on what you want to do. You can back this with another fabric so you cannot see your stitches, or keep this fabric longer so that it will cover up a lot of the back, or you can cover it. If you cover it, you're going to have to take out your hoops and put your fabric back in. So if you struggled to get it in the first time and you don't want to do that, then don't. I am fine with taking mine out, so I'm going to do that just to show people how to do it. If you don't want to take yours out of your hoop, then skip this first part. Okay? So I'm going to back mine with this blue, maybe. Is it big enough? Oh, it's not big enough. I have these pre-cut pieces from an old kit. Okay, I'm gonna use this blue one then. Actually, I thought this other one was right here. Let me look 1 second. Oh, you know what? I think it's in my bag. I wanted the rest of this fabric. I don't know what I did with it though. I can't find it. All right, I'm just gonna back mine with gray. If you have something to back it with that's fun, you can. If not, it's fine. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I did before with cutting my fabric for my hoop. Is I'm just gonna kind of lay this out like this and cut around it. You get my cords today. All right. I know, my cutting skills, man. Okay, so what I'm gonna do first is take my hoops apart. So I know I've tightened them, so I am going to loosen them first. Okay, and I'm gonna come down here and do the same, except not with a screwdriver because this one doesn't have the place for it there. Okay. Now remember, if you're using a bamboo hoop, they are sometimes warped, so make sure you keep track of where your top and bottoms go so they can go back together where they're supposed to. All right. So I'm just gonna lay. Now, if you're doing a single hoop, this is how you would do it, is backing it with a second fabric. You would take it out of the hoop and do what I'm doing. So single hoop or double hoop, you can do this or not. It's up to you. Okay, so what we're gonna do is do this the same as we did before. So Our inner hoop goes on top and our outer hoop goes on the back. I'm gonna keep my hardware over here. I mean, you could have it anywhere. I like that it's not like this little gap. It'll still create that little bit of a gap. So I like that it's not around a stitch. Actually, I wonder if I put it right there where that sand meets. I'm gonna try that. Okay, so I'm gonna put that down there, and this is gonna go behind, and instead of one fabric, we'll just be doing this with two. Move that over just a tiny bit. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing that we did before. We're gonna tighten this, and then we're gonna pull it snug. Except now we just have two fabrics to work with. So you can pull them separately, just one at a time, pull them apart and pull it tight, or this way. One thing is making sure that when you pull this tight, that you're pulling it all directions, not just out, but you can pull it like this way and this way if you're having problems with like puckering. All right, I'm gonna tighten this before I put on my outer hoop, or my bigger hoop, my second hoop. All right. So now our outer hoop goes on top and our inner hoop goes on the back, which is opposite of the center. And then I kind of want to get this as close as I can to where it was, because that's where I was stitching. I mean, we'll have to pull it and stuff as well, but if it goes on in a good spot, then it's a little bit easier to try and manipulate. So I gotta loosen this a little bit more. When I took off the hoop, I only had one piece of fabric in there, and now I've got two. So it's trying to make up that difference of space. All right. Now that it's on there, we're super lumpy and loose. I'm gonna tighten this a little and then start working on pulling this tight. So I'm gonna do the backing fabric first because I think that'll make the front easier. See, my fabric is a little bit short right there. Loosen this a little and pull that out first. All right, and then I can tighten that again. This is just a lot of like readjusting our fabrics. Some puckering there. So I'm just gonna kind of pull it apart while I pull out, like pull it apart this way and pull it out at the same time. Whoop, darn. I was pulling too hard for it. This is a lot harder with two, in case you're wondering, with two fabrics. So just a heads up, if you decide you want to cover up those stitches, it is a little bit more difficult. The first time we did this double hoop for, when was it? Winter of 21, I think. We did those Christmas wreaths and winter wreaths. We didn't do a backing fabric, and they still turned out so cute. I should get it out and show you. Okay. All right. I think that's about as tight as it's gonna get. So I'm gonna flip this over and work on getting my top fabric tight now. Hey Lincoln, down at the bottom of that closet is a bunch of different hoops. Will you see if you can find one that looks like this, but it has like a winter wreath? It's like blue and red and gray. Huh? Nope.
This is cool.
Not that one. I'll have my son find that hoop for us. Oh shoot. I forgot to center this. Don't be like me. Now I have to loosen it again. I totally forgot. I'm sorry. Start over.
I don't see that one.
Okay, is there any more sitting right there? Okay, take them all out. Take all of them out. All of the hoops that are finished. I'll put them all back later. Just take them out. There. Now that's centered. All right.
The controller died.
Okay. Now, let's do the front. It's not the most exciting work, but someone's got to do it. So while you're pulling, make sure you're kind of pushing the inner hoop back in. Okay. It's pretty tight. I'm gonna go one more time around it. Make sure that these are all pulled nice and tight. Okay. All right, here we go. So if you didn't do a backing fabric, this is where we're gonna start working on our cutting out our center. All right, so grab some scissors. Be brave. Oh my gosh, that is curved. That's why it's catching all the time. Okay, so what we're gonna do is cut out our center. Okay, and then we're just gonna cut to the edges. These scissors are not great, but that's okay. Might be easier to look at it this way. Just make sure that your hardware is tight before you start doing this, which I already did because I did all that tightening. Okay, so you can finish this one of two ways. I gotta get some different scissors. These are awful. I know I like these ones. They're just small. Okay, so you can hot glue this center or you can just cut it short. So I will show you how to do both. But first, we're just gonna cut this into little sections. All right, now if you're gonna hot glue it, I would say trim around this center so that these are a little bit shorter, like this. Have a lot of cute little scraps. Okay, and then you're gonna cut it all the way to the center so that it's nice and close there. And then you can cut these again if they're not working out great. But what you're gonna do is put this over the edge and then hot glue them to this inner ring, or super glue or Gorilla Glue or whatever. So you're just gonna glue those down. If you don't have a hot glue or you don't want to glue, see, these bigger ones are a little bit harder to flip over. So you might want to cut them just a little bit skinnier. But if you don't want to do that, you can just cut this right down to the hoop. So it's like that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut mine just all the way down to the hoop. This is why you want to make sure that this is nice and tight so that it doesn't pull that fabric out. So I'm gonna work on that real quick without holding it so close. I guess I could zoom in, huh? Embroidery scissors are great because they're small and you can get right up there by it. It's like awkward angles. My fingers like don't want to work at this angle. Okay. Hold on. I just realized I forgot to turn my phone on Do Not Disturb. Keep worrying a phone call's gonna come in. Okay. So this is where we're at. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is trim the backing fabric. If you don't have a backing fabric, skip this step. If you have bigger scissors, this would go a lot faster. But I just trim the backing fabric, not too close to the hoop. I want to make sure we don't cut like our fabric that we just stitched on, but just trim this a little bit shorter. You can leave it long so it's the same length as your back or your fabric that you stitched on, but I like to just cut it short and get it out of the way. I know people that keep it long and tie it in with the stitched on fabric, but I personally cut them. Okay. So then we've got this. And then I've got to get some bigger scissors. Now we're going to trim this outside edge. So if you are not using a backing fabric and you want as much of the stitching covered as possible, keep this a little bit longer, because when we flip it over to sew it closed, like if you keep it like this long, so maybe like, what is that? Like 2 inches maybe, then it'll cover a lot more of your stitches. If you did a backing fabric, you can cut this a little bit shorter. Just depends on what you wanted to do. You don't have to use pinking shears. That's what I'm using just because I don't know where my sewing scissors are. One of the kids might have wandered off with them. Pinking shears are fun though. They just help so that your fabric doesn't fray. All right. So I just kind of cut that excess off a little bit, and then we will tie this closed. Now you can, if you like to use the hot glue, you can do the same thing with the center and just trim these into sections. trim them a little bit shorter, fold them over, and glue them down. I don't like to do that though. So I need some thread. I would grab just one of the colors that you have extra of, and we will tie this closed. I would use all 6 strands. I wouldn't try to use less. I always have problems with threads breaking when I do that. And I just roughly measure it so it's like this, and then trim this. So whether you're doing the double or the single hoop, this is how I like to tie mine closed, is trim it and then sew it closed. So let me grab a needle. All 6 strands. Where's my top? Up here. I like to start at the top. And we're going to tie a knot, but we're going to leave a longer tail so that we have somewhere to pull from. So my knot is here, and then I've got this tail length so that I can use that to, when we tie this closed, we're going to do a running stitch. So you can kind of see that extra long tail. So I'm going to start from the back. And just make like, I don't know, not quite as long as my thumb, so 3/4 of an inch maybe. And I usually do them in one motion, so up, down, and then pull my needle. Up, down, pull the needle. And I try to stay maybe like 1/3 of the way, so 2/3 of the way up, so it's like 1/3 from the edge. So there's still some left. Like if you get it too close, then I always feel like I'm gonna pull my fabric out. But if you get it too close to the center, then it doesn't lay very flat. So you kind of have to find that happy medium, which I feel like is about 2/3 from the hoop or 1/3 from the edge, about. You can do these stitches a little bit closer together if you want. I don't really care if they're very even. I kind of just, wherever they end up, they end up. This is the back of the hoop. No one's really gonna see this. We're just getting this fabric out of the way. Now, if you don't want to tie this closed, you could trim it short like I did in the center, or like I did with the gray backing fabric. You could do that as well. You don't have to tie it closed. I like it tied closed. I think it's kind of a cute way to finish, but you definitely don't have to. But what I like about this is that if I have to take it out of the hoop, it's easy to close off again. I don't like gluing things because it feels really permanent. All right, so when I end, I try to end these close together. So that's where I started and that's where I'm gonna end. I'm gonna take my needle out, put it in my little pin cushion. All right, so now this is why we needed a tail, so that we can pull this. So what we're gonna do is pull both ends. Hold on to that. Tie a double knot. Or use somebody's little fingers to help hold that tight. And that's it. I like to leave a little tail because I think that they're cute. But see, if you didn't have the gray fabric, then you would just be able to see your stitches there, which is not a big deal. But do you see how much longer this is here? Like if I had kept it just slightly longer, it almost would completely cover those stitches. I usually trim mine just a little bit shorter than this actually, so you can see a little bit more of the backing fabric, but that's it. Now you have this cute finished hoop. Cute little wreath. What do you think? Are we happy? I'm happy. I also like to gently, I just have like a lint roller and I just gently go over it, because when we're trimming fabrics and trimming threads, they get a little bit messy. So just very gently, but like, oh, it was on the ground, but it'll pick up like quite a bit of lint, but just gently. That's it. You don't have to use one of these. You could just use your fingers, but I have one, so I use it. Okay, friends, that is it. Now that I'm looking at it, I can kind of see I didn't erase my lines very well, but I can just use a blow dryer and go over that again and erase all those lines. So let me know if you have questions, and I cannot wait to see your finished pieces. I will see you next time. I probably won't do another stitch along until my kids are back in school, just because schedules. But anyways, thanks so much for joining in. I can't wait to see these. Send me your finished pieces. I would love to share them with the group. So have a good rest of your week. Goodbye.